Well, I'm back from Houston, and if I look a little disheveled, it's probably because I feel like I've been run through a brush pile backwards while attempting to bush hog the same brush pile. The uh, the weekend was fabulous. We had a wonderful remembrance service for my brother-in-law, and I really enjoyed getting to see all of my family. There were a couple of things that weren't great about the time that I spent in Houston, but most of it had absolutely nothing to do with the remembrance ceremony. Uh, we stayed at the Embassy Suites Houston West, which is on the Katy Freeway. And one thing I have to say, they've really got the noise issue under control there. I couldn't hear the highway, and it was, maybe 50 yards outside the hotel. So I thought they'd done a really good job with noise suppression there, but that's the external noise suppression. The night before last, when we were getting ready to fly yesterday, we got back to the hotel at about 9 o'clock. We packed up all our stuff we hadn't already packed and got everything ready to go so that we could move out in the morning. And uh, about 9 o'clock, we decided to turn in. Well, I had noticed a group of young basketball players, all girls, that were in the room next to us. And they were giggling and laughing and carrying on and screaming and that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, it's 9 o'clock. That's not hideous. We'll turn on the TV and watch TV for a little while. But when it hadn't died down by 10 o'clock, I called the front desk and said, look, I don't want to be a party pooper here, but, I got to fly in the morning and I really don't want to go bleary eyed. I'd really like to get some rest. Can you do something about that? Well, apparently, this was one of those trips where the team had to travel to Houston to play in something. And I don't know whether it was a basketball team or a volleyball team or whatever it was. If I had to guess, I'd say it was probably a basketball team because all these little girls were fairly tall. But they were still in the 10 to 12 age group, I think. And the front desk said they would take care of it. So by 11 o'clock, when that hadn't fixed the problem, I called down again and said, look, I know you said you were going to take care of this, but you didn't take care of it. Can you send somebody up here to knock on the door and tell them to knock it off? Because every 15 seconds there was a squeal, a squeak, a screech, something. And, they were just kids being kids. But here's the other side of that story. When you bring kids to a hotel, whether it's your kids or 15 of somebody else's, you have to supervise them. And supervising them means that you respect the quiet hours in a hotel. And generally speaking, you do that by putting an adult in every room. But these adults had gotten a room for themselves. And when we walked by it, there was the aroma of that weed that I don't know, it smells a little bit like somebody flamed on a skunk when you walk by it. So maybe it was not the most legitimate thing to be smoking, particularly in a non smoking room, but I digress. All of the adults were in that room, nothing but kids were in the room next to us. So when whoever it was came and told the girls to settle down, I know this will be a shock. None of them settled down. So at midnight, I called the front desk and I said, look, this is my third call. I said, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to send somebody up here to talk to these girls and quiet them down, or you're going to refund me all of the money that I paid for this room. And those girls are about to learn some words that 10 to 12-year-old girls should never have to learn in a hotel. Because I can guarantee you, if you can't make them quiet, I can. So reason prevailed from the front desk. They sent somebody up, and after a couple of pounds on the door and some meek little voices answering that pound on the door, it got quiet in that room. And the next morning, we were going back to the room after breakfast when they were coming out of the room, and they just looked like they'd been run a marathon or something. They were all exhausted. And I kept thinking about the adults, and if you cared about the experience they were going to have playing in this game, you would have ensured that they got some sleep the night before, but they didn't. So that was really the only thing that happened while we were down in Houston. As I said, we had a really good time visiting with our family. I got to spend time with my sister, Diane, and I got to spend time with my cousin, Julie. Although they didn't make it for the pictures, I got to spend some time with my cousins, Paul and Anthony. That was great. We got to see Dick's extended family, and that was nice. It was truly an excellent way to remember somebody, and something I can absolutely recommend. And I want to apologize. The audio in the rest of this video is somewhat echoey. I will hopefully have that fixed here shortly once I figure out the proper place to stick this microphone here because I seem to have some difficulty capturing the audio appropriately. It'll work itself out. I hope you will forgive me for this one video. We went to some fabulous places to eat. First day we were there, we went to Papacitos, which is one of our favorite Tex-Mex restaurants down in Houston. It had a marvelous meal. And then the next day we went to the Good Company Barbecue, which was really, really good. Um, on Saturday, my wife decided she absolutely positively had to eat at a Lus Cafeteria because she'd never been to a Lus Cafeteria and she'd heard all about them. So we went to a Lus Cafeteria. We had cafeteria food. It wasn't bad, but not 5-star either. It certainly didn't compare to Papacitos or to the Good Company barbecue, which was really, really good. I think it's probably the best brisket I'd ever had, and that includes the kind I'd made. So, at any rate, we had a great time, and I wanted to talk a moment about the remembrance service because there were two components to it. And I want to give a shout out to the Houston National Cemetery. Now, my brother in law was a U.S. Navy veteran, and he was very proud of his service in the Navy. And he was a avionics technician. He worked out in California, out in, I believe, close to Fresno, Lemoore Air Station, I think is where he was, and had a really sterling career. Well, career about 6 years in the Navy, and then he got out and went to engineering school, got his degree, and moved down to Texas to become an engineer in some of the oil companies. So but he was very proud of that service, so he was entitled to be buried in the National Cemetery, as all veterans are. And we went out there to have his remembrance service at the uh, cemetery. And one of the things that I thought was really great is they provided an active duty naval officer and an active duty naval, um, I guess he would have been a petty officer, to be there for the military honors. And then the military honors were provided by a rifle team from the veterans of foreign wars. So that was marvelous. They did the full 21 gun salute. The military officer who was in charge refolded the flag twice to make sure that there were the 4 stars across the top of the flag when it was presented. That kind of dedication to duty, when you're talking about something that has, at least in the immediate sense, no military benefit, is very laudable. And I thought the cemetery did a marvelous job of getting us in and getting the service done. It was done in 30 minutes. And it was important to the family that the military honors be there, but not that there be a traditional funeral. So we went back to the house and we had a marvelous lunch. One of the local places provided some Mexican food, and it was really good. And then the next day, in addition to the family who had been there the first day, my sister invited in co-workers and people who knew him in the community. And there was a gentleman named Brian who used to work at La Peep in Houston. And La Peep, for many of you who don't know, is kind of a bacon and egg restaurant. They do a lot of breakfast food, waffles, omelets, French toast, all that stuff. And his restaurant had closed. So he had moved all the way to the other side of Houston. And if you've been to Houston, you know it takes you an hour to get from one side to the other, pretty much. He was all the way over there, and he came over to pay his respects. Um, it's sort of the measure of a man and what a hole he left in people's lives when you can look at the people who came to his remembrance service to remember him. Now, that was pretty interesting. The other thing that was interesting, I had not seen Dick's extended family, all of them, since my sister and um, Dick had been married, and that was in 1968. What was funny about it is I learned a lot of things about Dick that I had never known. There were two of my favorite stories out of that were when he was a kid, his father would fix up and repair cars that had been crashed and resell them. That's part of the way he protected and made sure that his family was provided for. So he rescued this semi truck, the semi tractor, I guess would be the right term. And the only thing that was salvageable from that truck was the windshield. So he took the windshield out, he put it in a box, he put it in the garage, didn't think any more about it, went to work on the truck. And when he got it all the way finished, he went to the garage and he found the box, and the box had this little circle of a target on it. And inside the circle of the target were about 55, 60 little holes where BBs had been shot through because Dick didn't realize that there was a windshield in this box. And the windshield was not salvageable after that, as you might imagine. So it probably wasn't as nearly as profitable as Dick's father would have liked. And then the other thing was that at the age of about 15, before he even had his driver's license, his family went off, or his mom and dad went off to have sort of a date night, and they had left a Volkswagen that his dad was working on with the keys in it. And Dick took it and went joyriding and knocked down some mailboxes. And when his father confronted him about it, and he said, "Well, it's your fault. You left the keys in it." And I don't suspect that went over really well with Dick's dad. So I thought that was because if you had known Dick, you would know that there was absolutely nothing in him that would have given you a clue that he had had that encounter in his youth. I would have thought pretty much that he'd been an altar boy because he was such a straight laced guy, very moral guy, and kept to himself. Didn't say a whole lot, but when he did speak, people listened. So I guess that sort of summarizes how I spent my weekend, and well, part of my weekend, uh, basically Friday and Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday I spent the day with my sister. We had a good time, and it was certainly worth it to do it, and it reinforced my belief that um, I just think funerals are a bad idea. I think you should remember the fallen, and certainly if they're a veteran, have a ceremony at the National Cemetery. But by the same token, not go through the silly things that happen at a funeral. That's just my belief. Now, if you believe very strongly in funerals, I'm all in favor of that. You should do exactly what you feel like you need to do. But this was really a good thing, and um, there were one or two people who got choked up at the remembrance ceremony, but it was only for a few minutes, and I think for the most part, everyone really enjoyed it and had a good time remembering somebody who was a force of nature in their lives. So that I just wanted to share that with everybody. I thought that it was something that people would find interesting. If you have any questions about that or need more information, give me a shout, either here in the comments down below, or you can certainly email me at my email address. If you have the opportunity today, do something kind, like Brian did. He drove for an hour to come spend an hour with people that he really loved. And I think that speaks a lot about him. I think LaPeep lost a really good employee when they closed that store. And even though they had other stores in Houston, they didn't bring him into one of those. And I think that was a bad move on their part. Again, thank you for watching. If you have any comments, let me know. And next time, catch me at the beach down here and we'll do it all again. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.